Good evening. At 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting of the City Council to order. We do have a quorum. I've asked Kathy to lead us in our invocation if y'all join us in prayer. All right, if the council's had the opportunity to look through the minutes of the May 9th, 2022 meeting and also the May 2022 financial report, if there's any questions, please share those, and if not, we look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
A motion from Sherilyn.
I'll second.
Second from Mary. All in favor? Thank you. All right, report on items of community interest. Does any of the council members have, all right. Tina, do you have something? Okay.
We got a letter, and it just says, I would like to thank Officer Tim Martin for his help. On May 22nd, myself and my family were traveling in two vehicles on the way to Mineral Wells, Texas to visit my daughter, and as I passed off the ramp at Lowe's, noticed my low tire light was on. I managed to pull over at the Lowe's exit. All the travelers were over 60 years old, and without the help of this fine officer, I'm not sure that what would have happened. Thank you again for Officer Martin for his service for us that day, and we really appreciate it. And they were out of Texarkana, no, Arkansas, and it said stop in at Red River Welcome Center if they was to come visit.
It's nice to get those. Sherilyn?
The community clothes closet will be the 28th and 29th of July.
Okay.
So if you have things to donate, it would be wonderful. We'll be taking them Monday and Tuesday or Wednesday of that week.
Which location? Where was that at?
It's going to be held at the grade school cafeteria this year.
All right. All right, great. Does anybody have anything else? Anybody here tonight have anything like to share on community interest? If not, we'll move right along. We do have a few signed up for speaking, citizen participation. I think that's for when we get to our agenda item. So we'll open our public hearing. It 6:04. The purpose of this hearing is to hear evidence for or against a request made by B.F. Hicks, owner, to rezone from residential R3 to outdoor commercial at his property located at 420 Holbrook Street in Mount Vernon, Texas. BF, would you like to come on up, sir? Yeah. We've got the new system going. You got to push the button.
Okay. And once I push, okay. Lauren Lewis and her husband Jason and Audrey Norman are also here, and they may want to speak in a moment or answer any questions y'all have. But this request for zoning change was precipitated by them approaching me looking for some property where they could potentially put in a community garden. And this would be a garden center and selling native plants and trying to promote landscaping and all. And we actually looked first at the Thruston house, and I'm still hoping that Lauren will go out there and put a community garden in. And along that line, I have an antique tractor I've given to Jason with the anticipation he'll do something with it with a bunch of farm equipment. Because, as y'all know, we operate like these 70 signs, and you've heard my complaints about all the amount of time that goes in it, but it certainly does add to a community pride and awareness of our history. So the band hall grounds open onto Holbrook Street, and they're next to the old high school anyway. So if you're going south and you've got the the old high school and the band hall, which started out, well, it truly was a band hall, and the Baptists used it for a while before they built their Presence Center at one point for family life, and then the Boy Scouts had used it for a long time. And this is going back, I've had it for like the last 30 years. And last year, I'm 71, I'll be 71 in July, and so selling my interest in the title company and retiring, paying the electric bill and the utilities and the water down there is a little burdensome. And when Lauren said that she was interested perhaps in opening a garden center, I was like, well, why don't you just look at that property? And then the first thing we have to do is come to the city and say, would that be anything that could be possible? I don't know if they've yet talked with the owner of the Forest, who has the high school property, but you got all that parking across the front there too on Holbrook Street, about half of a city block's worth. And so, and I told them from my church side, where I actually live, up at the former Methodist Church, 501, they could pull 2 or 3 cars in there for their working crowd. So whatever crew they had. If you haven't walked back in there after 30 years of having it, it's pretty much park-like, and it's developed into some established property and pretty neat. And the things that survived the Arctic storm Uri in February. We're not going to forget that date of 2021. So I'm about my 3 minutes. I'd answer any questions, but really, if we can have a zoning, even a special variance, to allow them to have outdoor plants and kind of work around what is there, hold their feet to the fire on the way it will look, or ask them the questions. But I said their interest led me to offer the property if we could have city zoning to allow that to happen. The inside of the band hall is about 1,200 square feet. You could have fertilizer and plants and small greenhouse-like stuff, or furnishings too, or watering systems and all like that. So for anybody interested in landscaping, especially with native plants, and I would throw in, last weekend, and you may have seen the number of people here in town, we had a big luncheon at the Glove Factory. I had 51 people from the Native Prairies Association of Texas, people from Conroe, Texas, Houston, Austin, a lot of Dallasites, and because we've got the interest now in all of these wildflowers and Texas wildflowers. So this spring, over the last 2 months, I've had artists from both coasts feeding some of those people up at the Chop House and in Edwards, and we used the sandwich place because it was just in and out real quick, and we used the railroad depot and had a bunch of speakers on using Texas native plants in landscaping. And so that's the Native Prairies Association of Texas, and then they're trying to do little prairie scapes where that people do like a half an acre or so in their backyard with native plants. And we're going to start collecting seeds out on this native prairie preserve that I have. And that's 922 acres. And I didn't bring my phone with me. I just had a text from a guy named Sean O'Connor, who's a pretty prominent Texas photographer. I told him the gate would be unlocked for him this week so he can go out, and lots of wildflowers blooming right now. So I pretty much told Lauren and Audrey, if I can start collecting that rent, they can go collect some seeds and whatever they can sell the seeds for, more power to them. May I yield the floor?
Thank you, BF. Absolutely.
I think you've heard enough from me.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'd just like to further expand.
Come on up, please. Yeah, please do.
Give them a chance to ask you some questions. You know more than me.
I'm open to questions. I kind of like to just tell a little bit more about what it is, I think. So, as BF said, there is a really growing interest in Texas natives, naturalized plants, things that require low water. And so our goal is to provide these Texas native species and naturalized plants to people that are interested in them. And I think that this could bring in some ecotourism from the surrounding areas. It's really hard to find specialized nurseries for Texas plants. So if you're looking to go hyper native, hyper local, we're going to be the place to go. Our nearest source right now is Nacogdoches. So I think we could pull in people from other towns, and then they could eat at the square and shop at the other businesses. So hopefully it would help bring in some good tax revenue. Do y'all have any questions?
Sounds like a great idea.
Oh, they can't question me. Okay, well, yeah. Yeah.
Audrey, would you like to speak too?
I think she did a great job.
Okay. Well, with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. It is 6:10. Moving on to item 2. Is consider an act upon approval of ordinance 2022-05, rezoning the property located at 420 Holbrook Street from residential R3 to outdoor commercial. And BF, you probably zoned that R3 back years ago from, that was looking at. I think it sounds like a cool idea though. And as mentioned to Audrey before, Lauren, when y'all got here, one of our favorite places to go down to Green outside of New Braunfels, and they've got a big clay pottery deal where they'll have like an annual event, but every year every time we're there, there's somebody doing, local pottery stuff. They got local artisans in there, and if y'all are gonna do that kind of stuff too, I think that's pretty cool. We don't have anything like that around here. And I like using native plants in all of our landscaping. So again, a focus on that, one more thing that nobody's really focused on, so. And see some of our old historic real estate, get a new life. I'm rambling here, but I think it sounds like a great idea. I'll let the council have any questions they'd like to ask her.
So in that property, where would the public enter at to get in to where your business would be at?
From parking on Holbrook, we're gonna work on fencing so we can make access direct to the property.
That building next door to the parking is all available because they're just storing stuff in there, I think, aren't they, BF? Yeah. So you do have more parking than what it would look like on that initial property.
You see the highlighted street right here, that's Holbrook.
If there's no further discussion, we would look for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Got a motion from Mark. Any second?
I'll second.
Got a second and a third, so I think we'll say all in favor. Aye. Yeah, motion carries. I think it's a great idea and wish you guys the best. So,
Thank you so much.
Yep. If you are needing some things, a lot of our EDC members are here tonight too. If there's something that comes up with that building or whatever you may need, to look at opportunities there, feel free to reach out to Chairman Saxe and let us know. But glad to hear y'all are going to do that. That's cool. Okay, on the agenda, moving item, the bond council report forward. We've got Nick Boulos with us in the background on Zoom. Is Nick out there okay? Nick, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. I had a small group in earlier in the week with Nick and a couple of the council members just to kind of go through a pre-look at the preliminary work that he's done for us. Of course, it's taking a look at where we're at today with our existing debt, where we're at with revenue, and just what our ability is to service more debt. We all know we've got a monumental task with three separate streams of infrastructure work to be done. So I'd ask Nick if he could this evening just kind of walk us through for the group. And we've got a nice group in attendance here. Most of our EDC is here too, so we'd invited them to be part of the meeting tonight. I think it would be good for all of us to, just kind of be on the same page. But thank you this evening for walking us through where we're at currently. I'll turn it over to you, Nick.
Absolutely, yes, sir. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, I'll pass it to you if that's okay.
Okay, absolutely. And I just want to make sure I had updated this analysis, and it should say in the bottom right-hand corner, June 10th, 2022. Is that the one you're looking at? Okay, great. So the first page, this is the existing debt overview of the city. And I'll refer to the top numbers to reference various columns as I walk through this. It's a lot of numbers, I know it, but I'll try to kind of give you the Reader's Digest version and not get into the weeds as much. Columns 2 and 3, this is the taxable valuation of the city or the city's tax base. And the debt obligations that are not paid by the utility fund revenues fall to your INS tax rate, or your debt service tax rate. You have two components. You have the M&O and the INS. So debt payments fall to the INS, and that taxable value is a critical component of that. So the higher the tax base, the more revenues one penny produces, and vice versa. So I've assumed in yellow some just various growth assumptions. I know the city will receive their certified 23 tax base in a little over a month. So I just looking at historicals, and seeing what else is going on in the state, I've assumed just 5% and 4%, but we can always update that. Columns 4, 5, and 6, this is the existing debt service or existing bonds of the city. It's comprised of the 2013 CO and the 2021 GO refunding bonds. So a couple things to point out. Column 4, that's the principal. Column 5, that's the interest. Column 6, that's the total payments. And I do want to show that if you look at column 6, you can see in 21 it was about 346,000. Column in 22 is about 334. 23, the upcoming budget year, it's about 329,000, and then it drops down by about $100,000 heading into your 24 budget. So it's nice to have step downs in your debt service rather than the opposite, where your debt service is going to ratchet up over time. So good debt portfolio. Column 7, this is the debt that's paid from the water sewer revenues. I believe there's a $15 and so on charge per month on the utility bill. And so in 21 and 22, that amount was about $183,000. After talking with Tina and the mayor, the thought process was, let's see what it looks like if that, if we reduce that $15 surcharge to $10, so roughly a 33% decrease to the monthly surcharge on the bill. And so while your residents or your ratepayers would not be paying $15 a month, they'd be paying $10 a month. So the city would have less money to use in its water sewer budget to pay for the debt service. So that's why the decline goes from 183,000 in 22 to 122,000, and I just kept that constant 23 and beyond. So then you move over to columns 8 and 9. This is the INS portion that would have to fund this portion of the city's debt service, and it's purely a component of your taxable value in column 2. So you take in column 8, divide that by your taxable value, and you get roughly your tax rate per $100 of valuation. So I do want to point out, if you look at 22, that was your actual, in column 9, your actual INS tax rate of about 9.5 cents. Since we would be transferring less and paying less debt service out of the utility fund, and therefore more debt service would fall to the INS tax rate as a result of reducing that $15 surcharge, the INS tax rate is expected to increase by about 4 pennies to make up that difference. And then, as you can see, the next year it goes from 13.5 cents and down because, again, your debt service drops off in budget year 24. So before I move on, I just want to stop here for a second because this is kind of where you are, where the city is right now. The city does not have to reduce that transfer from $15 to $10. It can increase the transfer. It can do, that's part of its budget process and how it pays for its debt. But after several iterations, this is the one that I guess we talked about last. So before we go any further, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
And I just would want to reiterate what Nick has walked us through there and the comments around the $15 charge that we all see on all the council lives in city here, so we see it on our bill. BF, there's a number of us in the crowd that are residents of the city. So that's previous debt that was financed via your water bill. Right or wrong, I don't know why it's there, but we get asked often, why do we have this $15 line item charge? And it ends up making our water bill that much more expensive. And it really is a pretty good burden for some people that are just getting started off or young renters. I just, while we're going through the opportunity of finding a way to fund the work we've got to do, I'm challenging us to see if we can find a way to reduce that. Some of it, all of it, ideally it would be funded at your debt level. It wouldn't be a fee that you're paying on your water bill. So we may not move it at all, but while we were looking at this, I wanted to see if we could afford to at least reduce it some, maybe $10. We don't know if it's 5, 10, or none, but If we can afford to, as we work through the steps of this, we're going to see if we might find a way to help people with their water bills a little bit. And about the only way you can do that is through this debt instrument that's sitting on their bill right now.
Yes, sir. And again, so in that transfer, I mean, that's part of the city's budget process. It can make that change, and whenever it's setting its budget, it can again, and it can make a change the following year. I mean, this is all the up to the discretion of the city on how it budgets for its debt payments. Turning to the next page. So this next page, even more numbers, and I'm sorry, but I'll even be even more high level here. This points out the new issuance that has been discussed with the wastewater treatment plant, the wastewater collection system, and the water distribution system. And really, this page is focusing on the incremental impact it would have. Now, I'm kicking myself just because I think I would like to have had your existing debt service tax rate from the previous page, that column 9, on this page, but just know that you need to take column 9 into account as you look at any sort of impacts and add those figures from column 9 to whatever impact is here. But what I was trying to do, just to set the stage, is give you kind of some bounds of if you wanted to do 100% of this project, so all 3 projects, and you wanted to fund it all on the INS taxes, or if you wanted to fund it all through your utility rates. But there's many ways in between we could do. Maybe the city says, you know what, we would like to do 50% INS taxes, 50% utility rate, or 75-25, 25-75. However the city wants to look at it, we can slice it and dice it. But this was just to give you the outer bounds of 100% taxes, 100% utility revenues. So again, looking at the columns on top of the page, 2 and 3, this is the utility fund revenue and expenses. And I pulled the 21 numbers straight from the audit. I pulled the 22 numbers from the 22 budget. And for 23 and beyond, I effectively took the 22 revenues, but I took out $5 per water connection. I think there's 1,253 water connections. So I took out roughly that amount of revenue because, again, from the previous page and the previous discussion, if the city is going to reduce that $15.50 to $10, then you're not going to have as much revenues coming into the utility fund. So I wanted to make sure I captured that in this analysis. So that's why if you look at column 2 and 22, it's 1,840,000, then it drops to 1,757,000, just to be reflective of that that decrease in revenue. I kept those going constant throughout. The expenses, I kept the 22 expenses constant throughout. And then column 2 minus column 3 gets your operating income for your utility fund. Next to that, you put column 5, the existing debt that's repaid by your water sewer revenues. That column 5 matches column 7 from the previous page. That's where that is coming from. So you're using your utility fund revenues. You're going to transfer that amount, so $122,000 for 23 budget into your INS fund to pay those existing debt. And then finally, in column 6, you get your revenues minus your expenses minus your existing debt service, and you effectively have what's excess and available to pay any new debt obligations. And you can see it's about $75,000, and then as your existing debt pays off in 2042, it increases just a bit. Any questions there, or just keep on going? Okay, I'll just keep going through it. Column 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are the new projects that are, I guess, for discussion. The first, column 7, is 4.5 million wastewater treatment plant. This is principal and interest just loaded into an annual payment. For all of these, 7, 8, 9, and 10, the 10 is the summation of 7, 8, and 9. I've assumed a December sell date, and then I've also assumed your first payment would not occur until your 2024 budget year, so about February or so of 2024, because if we sell in December, you've already levied your INS tax rate in your budget for 23, so we would be, there's no way to do a supplemental INS tax rate levy, so we have to have that first payment come into the following year, your following budget year, when you have the ability to levy a tax or create additional revenue to make that payment. I've assumed 5% interest rate over a 30-year level amortization for all of these projects. You may think, 5% sounds like a lot, but for those that may follow the financial markets, it's been a roller coaster the past couple days. The CPI numbers came in much hotter than expected last week. You have the Fed meeting that starts tomorrow and goes on to Wednesday. They're now calling for a 75 basis point hike rather than a 50 basis point hike. And the long-term debt market is very tough right now. So I'm trying to assume an interest rate that I think is reasonable yet conservative, that we don't have to continually worry about all the noise that's going on in the market, that this is something that we can, budget around and project. But so moving on, column 8, this is the 8 million wastewater collection system, total debt service over the 30-year period. The 3.3 million water distribution system is in column 9. And then column 10 sums those three into one. That's the full $15.8 million of improvements. So column 11 is the shortfall of your utility revenues to make payment. So really the math here is column 10 minus column 6, and you get the shortfall that we need to make up. Because you can see in column 6, we have $75,000 of available revenue. Column 10, we have over $1 million of annual debt service. So you can see kind of where we are in terms of the makeup of the revenue. So column 12, this represents the tax rate impact, does not include your existing INS tax rate, projected tax rate, nor your M&O tax rate that's used for, you're keeping the lights on and running the city. So column 12 is if you said, we're going to put all of this repayment, all of the shortfall in column 11 onto our INS tax rate, this would be the tax rate impact you would be looking at. If you said, okay, we're going to pay for the sewer, then on the other end, you say, okay, no new taxes. We're not going to charge this to the INS side. We're going to fund this purely out of our utility rates. That's what columns 13 and 14 represent. Is if you said, okay, all the sewer projects are going to be on the sewer connections, which is approximately 1,100 connections. Here's what that the monthly impact to your sewer rate would be. And then column 14, if you said, okay, we're going to charge the $3.3 million water distribution onto our water rate. So that's what that would show on a monthly impact to your water bill is about $14. A debt is a fixed cost. So that's why I'm just taking your number of connections, dividing it by the debt service, and then dividing that number by 12. Because if you don't sell any water, you still need to pay for the debt service. So that's why in the back of my mind, I see the repayment of any of these debt obligations on the utility side as a fixed cost, not a volumetric charge through rates. And I'll stop there and pause for any questions or anything that I can add.
So if I'm looking at column 12 and you're telling me on the INS tax rate 62.49 and currently Mount Vernon's on a 0.6? 60 cents. So the options to get what we need to quit paying fines and whatever and get to where we can grow some more and put more businesses in town is either add $14 a month to the water bill or raise the tax rate 2.5 cents. That's 62.
62 plus,
The 60.
plus the, over here, column 9, the 13.6. That's the existing one. So that's 75 cents plus there's no, what's for M and O? There would be, that's just. It would be 62 cents plus the 13 cents.
Correct.
That's INS. That's 75 cents.
That's just INS.
INS.
Then you
That's
got
not
your M and O.
M&O.
Yeah.
No is, what did I say? I had that written down here. I think it's 50 cents.
That sounds right.
I think it is.
50, 51.
I was gonna say, I have it somewhere.
So Nick, I might, while we have a pretty good group here tonight too, and again, we've got our EDC, I'd like to just walk through just briefly why we have the three streams where we're at today, right? So about 10 years ago, you can go back and look at the city's comprehensive plan, and you can see at that time that the plan identified that our waste treatment plant was badly in need of upsizing. We also identified that our water treatment plant, that where we make water, our drinking water, was going to run into a problem with being able to handle more connections. So we don't even have that in the scope of the projects here. Our water treatment, our water plant, our clean water plant, where you're producing water for our consumption, we really don't have room for any more connections. And that's exaggerated. We probably could add 12. It literally is no more connections. So if a neighborhood's coming, we don't have the water for you. If you get a nice industry here that says, okay, I'm a major user, we may or may not have water for you. We probably do on an industrial user. It's a needle in a haystack. We can produce about 500,000 or 600,000 gallons of water a day more than we sell. That's our problem. In Dallas, a connection will average, you have to have 0.6 of a gallon per minute available for a connection on your water. I've learned these things. I didn't know it until I learned from Tina, everybody, but we only use about 0.2 of a gallon in a rural town like this. Our residents use about 0.2 of a gallon, but you still have to have 0.6 of a gallon of water available to every connection. Highland Park, they're watering their yard and they're probably using 0.5 or 0.55 or pushing all the way. So our overhead recovery at the water plant, we don't recover it. So we need a major user. We're hoping somebody like the SUD. We're having discussions there to see if there's a way to build a more regular water supplier to them. May not be. So we don't even have that in the scope. But our comprehensive plan 10 years ago said your water plant is in need of volume increase so you can handle the connections that we're getting. The sewer plant as well was identified that you're going to overrun this plant. It's too much. And what happened? We've got Lowe's wanting to double its size. We've got Dukes came. We've had Sefco upgrade their facilities. We've had McDonald's. We've had new things come to the interstate, and it's going to keep coming. And what comes to this treatment plant from those commercial developments, and we're glad to have them, their jobs and sales tax, but it is a huge issue for us. So this last year we got a fine from TCEQ for how many dollars? $20,000? $17,000. That was for the plant failing a test a year prior to that. I said, wow, we're going to start budgeting for fines at our sewer treatment plant. We're not going to budget for fines. We have to address it. Well, ironically, we had already overrun it again, so we've got another fine coming. So all these things are past history where we got overruns, fail and test. The wastewater treatment plant cannot be ignored any longer. cities the size of Sulphur Springs or Mount Pleasant, definitely Royce cities and places like that, they would do an impact analysis, and there would be impact fees charged to developers. We get asked from folks today, what's the process for an impact analysis from our project? Well, we don't have anything. So we're taking that hit on at the citizen property owner, at the property owner level at the city of Mount Vernon. So Tina, we've asked KSA, our engineering firm, to help take us down that path along with our city attorney. It's going to take catch up. It'll take about 9 months, I think, to get to that point, but we will have to have something in place to where we're not always taking the brunt hit whenever somebody wants to develop. And we want the business, we want them to come, but they expect to pay impact fees. They expect that they're causing stress on your utility system. That's why a lot of times companies will look at a rural town and they'll realize, okay, there's no fees for that. Let's move there. That's one less thing we got to pay that we'll pay in 15 miles further down the road. So we've got to get these are no digs on anybody either. It's just things that we're realizing. Okay, this economy, we're not going to stop growing. There's too many people coming to Texas. There's too many people want to come to a lovely county like Franklin County and the best city in the state, Mount Vernon, Texas, right? So I mean, why would you not want to move here? We're the best town in the state. So you better get ready for it. So I'm rambling, but that first column is the treatment plant. We have to do something about our treatment plant, and it's $4.5 million project. I'm going to go straight to the water. We have water distribution. That is, we have 1.3 miles of lead water pipe still. So we got kids and families and grandkids drinking water that's coming to their homes through lead water pipes. Now, some of those, the houses may have lead pipes on their yards, so you can't address that. But as far as our distribution system, 1 inch, and I should have brought it tonight, because I bring it for show and tell sometimes as we keep reminding ourselves why we were going down the path of trying to find a way to move forward and get our infrastructure fixed. They're 1 inch lines that have about that much room flowing through them, and they're digging them up every day, all the time. And when you do, you see the stainless steel clamps running all the way down and all the way down and all the way down, and water oozing out in between the clamps. And finally, they'll just cut out sections, which I had them cut me one out so I could have it for the council to see. It's horrible. Well, as we look at the expenses here, and Nick's walking through the cost, and what the council's saying is, well, we can't take our tax rate to $1.22. It's not going to happen. What we will do, it'll help us prioritize. We are going to have to take on some debt. There's no way around it. We all know that we're going to, as citizens of Mount Vernon, property owners, we're going to end up having to pay some debt. We're going to have to find a way to get the lead water lines going, get the sewer plant up and running, if we can handle the volume. We're also going to put things in place that minimizes the impact to where businesses also are looking at when they want to come here or development takes place, that they realize there's going to be an analysis done, and we're going to make sure what we may need from help on our infrastructure. The wastewater collection system, it's miles of 100-year-old clay tile, and that's why when you see the sinkholes in the streets, or you see our guys backhoeing, digging up in the streets all the time, they're digging those up to a Band-Aid where that clay tile is either disintegrated in the bottom, or it's cracked in half, or it's, tree roots have caused it to do this and that, and it doesn't flow like it should. It's an everyday event. And again, we don't have the manpower to do that. Folks will say, well, why can't y'all go weed eat something? Well, because every guy we've got is in a hole right now, swimming in sewage, trying to figure out how to keep this old clay tile flowing. It's a major issue, and I guess Tina, probably in the beginning, and City Hall got tired of me in their hair. But I think they realize I appreciate what they're doing. Good God, I don't want to see our young men and women swimming in raw sewage because we're not actually acting on a comprehensive plan that was identified 10 years ago. So your comprehensive plan becomes a comprehensive note if you don't act on it. And fortunately, we got a council full of people who are saying we're going to act on and put a plan. We've updated the plan. The last year we've been mapping out all that clay tile so we know how many feet there are. We know where every brick-lined manhole is. One of the first things I heard was, well, we have a whole bunch of them. I said, well, a whole bunch of them, and this is the last time we hear a whole bunch of. We need to know, is it 40, 50, 110, 112, and where are they at? Well, we thought there were 40 or 50, then there were 60 or 70. There's some that are buried under streets where TxDOT has paved over them. That's the other thing. They come and redo a street, and they just pave over your manholes. So there's 112 or so. Yeah, is how many there are. And in between every one of them is clay tile. So for us is and we're not gonna make a decision on what we're gonna do on assuming additional debt and how many dollars that'll be and how you structure it. But we will take a look at it, and this is just Brad speaking, but this is us speaking for the last months. Those lead water lines have to go. They have to go. And where those are at, you have the same thing. You got clay tile sewer lines, right? So what we'll do is we'll prioritize knowing where Nick is helping us see the cost that we're talking about taking on and looking at the options. AdCog has a little bit of grant money they've identified for us to go after, but it's small amounts, and it always has a match. Well, we don't have any money to match grant funds through the city. Chairman Saxey and group, that's the reason I asked the EDC to come and hear more. There's going to be some times where we're going to say, hey, we need a match on infrastructure, and we may lead to you guys. That's probably the place to get the matching funds. But we are going to look for grants. We're going to look for other places to get pieces of this. It's $15.5 million worth of work. We may identify, I'm just going to speak out loud, we may identify 7 or 8 million of it that we say absolutely has to happen. The sewage plant, we can't ignore it anymore. We can't budget for $20,000 fines, and they get bigger. If you don't address it, they're going up now. So that's like, there's no way we can ignore it. But where those water lines are, and they've got to go, we'll get the math on that, and we'll decide exactly where we're going to take on it, what the fashion is. But Nick, I mean, it's big numbers, and it is, we knew it would be something that we'd probably go, okay, you might not be able to do all of it right now, but we are going to identify what we are going to do right now, and we're going to have a plan for that we identify to be second priority and third priority and fourth priority, right? So it's moving forward and not just kicking the can down the road going, well, this is too big of a task, let's work on something else. We're not going to do that. So I want to say thank you for the council for just the stick-to-itiveness of it, and KSA and the work they've done. I mean, it's from the beginning is like, we can't afford to do this. Well, we don't have an option. You can't not have a wastewater treatment plant. You have to have that thing that can handle the effluent. You got to handle the growth that's coming to us, or the state will take over. Somebody else will run your business for you, and I promise you don't want that to happen. So I've rambled a little bit, but I want to just kind of add a little bit of color on each of the three infrastructure streams and what we're looking at doing and how we got here. It's all mapping it out. It's actually going out and going through those manholes, going through the sewer lines, digging up looking at the water lines and identifying where the lead pipe's at, which surprised me. I didn't know we still had lead water lines, but we do. And some will say, why you keep talking about it? I said, well, because the only reason you fix it is if you get is transparency. You get it out in the open and you share with your friends and family that you're, living here with. Is like, hey, we're gonna deal with this. We're gonna get it going. So
Have the residents been notified of this? Do the people living in those houses know that their water is being delivered to them in lead lines?
some do. Yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah, especially when they're used to seeing the road dug up in front of their houses regularly and the Band-Aid put on. So yeah, a lot of them do. And their water pressure is very, very, very low. So 1-inch lines, when we've got this mapped out to be 4-inch lines, and so a lot of things will improve when we get it done. They'll get water pressure back. They'll get better flow. Their houses, you can't fix what somebody has in their house or under their yard because it's private investment there. But at least the distribution center to the tap, we want to come into the 70s, 80s. I mean, we're way behind, right? I'm joking
Your house
here,
has
but
copper.
Good to know, thank you.
well, and I'll add. I mean, some of us are fortunate. Our house has good water lines to it, so this isn't. It's not an impact to me as a resident, but I know what my fellow neighbors are dealing with, right? So, this is our city, and this is what we all signed up for, is to try to find a way, help us move forward, and safety number one, right? I want to make sure everybody's drinking water, drinking something safe. Our water tower, we're going to talk about that later in the meeting, but the one by the police station, it's 15 years or so behind on its maintenance. What's a $400,000 bill? We don't have $400,000 laying around.
Well, and if it goes out, it's
$3 million.
4 times that.
Yeah, it's a huge number. So if you lose it, you got a major issue, is right. So that's another one. That's not in the scope of the conversation tonight. We're going to try to find a way to do that outside of this. We can't lose the water tower. It's what Tina would say, like over half your pressure of the water system. You'd lose it, wouldn't you? I mean, it would be a major hit to our water pressures and volume. So there's a lot to be done, and we're not unlike rural towns all over the country, right? So we're not necessarily an anomaly there. But if you look at Mount Vernon and who we are and where we are, we're a great little town, and the growth is coming to us for a reason. Our schools are awesome. We have a little crime here, close proximity to the Metroplex. We're on I-30. It's beautiful out here. Great people. A lot of them sitting in the room tonight. I mean, it's just, it's a community that's very attractive for growth, and it's not gonna slow down. So we're gonna get ahead of it, and it won't happen overnight. Just the hit go and be shovel ready will take a year. So there's a lot of work that we've done to map it out, and now we're getting the financing figured out. With Nick's help, thank you, and we will map something out that we can all stomach too. But it's gonna take, I share this and I talk too much. I know I'll shut up now, but the key is we all have to talk about it so we understand why we've got to address our infrastructure. It's not something we can ignore anymore, and it's gonna be expensive. Nick, we probably are good with letting you get on with your family tonight. Does anybody else have any questions for Nick? We'll be talking obviously often like we are, but I appreciate you tonight coming on and just walking us through it. That was very helpful, and we'll start crafting a plan from here. But you've given us what we need to be able to identify what we can stomach as a community, and I'm sure we'll be back to you.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank all y'all for y'all's time tonight.
Thanks, Nick. Have a good night.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to have a good update, and I really appreciate that we had a nice crowd here tonight too. We're all living this, so we'll get a path forward. But it is something that keeps me up at night. All right, so item 3, Kathy, we'll move along. Right? Did I get done too? Okay, consider and act upon an interlocal agreement with ACCOG in connection with planning and groundwork of grants related to Texas Department of Ag and or the Department of Commerce, the EDA, which is my reference to. We're gonna look for help also from ADCOG. There are some grants out there, they're small. There's one maybe right now that's about $500,000, but you gotta have $500,000 in matching funds, you know, so it's like, okay, that's great, but we don't have the cash sitting around. But there are some things there, and they're not always 50-50. There may be something that's a 10% matching grant or nothing. There may just be free money. We'll hope that the administration might have something to actually take place. There was something identified would be lead water lines would be part of it if they could get it across the line, and we haven't seen that, but we're shovel ready if they do. So we're obviously looking for grant money, but it's not something we can just sit back and hope comes one day. We're going to move forward one way or another. But this is to actually put ADCOG to work, right? So I need a motion for us to allow them to do the work for us.
So motion.
Got a motion from Mark, and a second?
Second.
Second from Mary, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries, thank you all. At this time, we're gonna adjourn briefly into an executive session.
We attempted twice
Okay, well, we need to sign up. Put us on the list. How much is that gonna cost? It's awesome. I mean, these numbers are.
Then you wanted to.
It is interesting, it's something we just totally take for granted until it doesn't work.
Yeah, then it costs you a fortune.
Yeah, I replaced all my sewer lines from a house out in Australia last year for $8,000, and they're all clay pipes, they didn't last.
I was planting a tree last fall and hit something, and I wasn't going very far into it. Those were tires. Well, it was in the.
There's a lot of puddling up over.
So, how are you feeling now?
I wanted to hug your neck.
Okay, yes, I would really appreciate that. I do. Okay. We got the paperwork went to the scanning receipts. But I'm still talking. And you're telling me there's our business choking. Googled like, how do I do that? Yeah, but okay, yeah, quick listen.
They must be skilled to some degree. They're having to swim across that river.
So which one, is it like the 941 or what do you buy? There's actually a way to change the frequency range. Okay, well, if you enter it, I know it's tax, I don't know if you'll have to. Yes, it'll track it. Well, yeah, so but
You'll be ahead of the curve.
hopefully so. Okay, well, yeah, so you don't have to teach me that, I can grab that, but the next one.
What?
Exactly right. And even look at the, I guess, one of the new, the new love.
Is the AC going in there?
Yeah.
And they had that dollar percentage you get with you, they were all over that place.
Kill 'em?
Yeah.
So I've got several activists, potters, and just yeah, Audrey has a farm too, and I'm thinking Lincoln's, sheds would be a really good place to put one. Yeah, we were thinking it'd be fun to get like paint your own pot, like the, yeah, kids come, they paint a pot, we fire it for them, and then they can buy fancy scissors. Springs, just remember when I put it out there, it was said that the personal property taxes hits.
Inventory.
I think so too, because it's sales tax, and then you have to pay, you get your DDA, and then you have to pay property taxes, and then you get slammed with your,
You can do the DBA pretty easy online.
we got the DDA done, we got it done. I had talked to
bank
several
across
years
from
ago,
Sonnet,
when I worked
on
in
this
the
side of
business,
it.
and we had
Fraser thing.
so we had some of the senators there, you know, our state senator. So I was celebrating.
Used to be TAB. And I didn't even know what that's.
That needs to be looked at. They do,
Oh,
they look
attention.
at other stuff, so. I'll try. And that's a soft system. You go through, fill out a form. You put your
All right, it's 7:14 and we've closed our executive session. Moving on to item number 4. Consider and act upon approval of amendment to the EDC application policies. On this, we would need a motion to approve. Okay, the motion dies for, the agenda item dies for lack of a motion. Agenda item number 5, we would not be in consideration without the amendment. So with that, we will move on to discussion items. Mayor, City Council, and Administrator Tina.
So the very first one I want to talk about is the water tower. The engineers are ready to go out for bids right now. I kind of held them off because we don't have the money. It's $400,000. Anyway, they said, I even asked them, I was like, all right, start advertising. They said 60 to 90 days they'll be ready to go. So we need funding.
So this is one where the EDC board and having some funds available, this is a place that we could lean to you guys for consideration on an EDC fund. That would go into the 23 budget, right? If we did that? So that would be something for a budget consideration for you guys as you're building the EDC budget for the 23 fiscal year. But it's also right in front of us, and we've got a slot to do the tower. It's in critical need that we do it, but that is within the EDC and the realm of what our EDC does as a type B tax revenue. Public safety utilities, recycling facilities, streets, roads, drainage, and related improvements, general municipality-owned improvements, maintenance and operating cost, and demolition of existing structures. There's a number of things, all that are our infrastructure that you can lean back to the EDC to say, okay, here's a spot to employ some of those funds to make sure we're still keeping our water system healthy and sending the right message to developers looking at our town right now. If you look at our water system and ask enough questions, you're gonna have more red flags on that water tower come up. But that's, I appreciate you bringing that one up.
Also, the impact study. I've gotten with KSA, they're gonna start looking into this impact study, and that's on the water, sewer, and streets. Anything that's gonna come in new for an impact fee, so that we could allow. Also, I think I've already mentioned this, Texas Parks and Wildlife they said, they did say we could apply again.
I made a comment when we heard that was denied, you know, maybe that's one that we look at as a blessing in disguise, because if it's there, it does encumber the property, you know, so if we have some development opportunities that trail would be in the way of, so we do have more freedom to operate there. Kinda gotta look at the high side, I guess, and if there is one.
Also, budget, that'll be the workshop on the, we're gonna start budget workshops on the 27th. I've already met with department heads, they're supposed to get us all the capital items, Wednesday. Also, I gave you the vision statement and the proposed, budget calendar.
Mark Saxe, Economic Development Corporation President. I'm going to bore the crap out of you tonight. So the only thing that I really have to tell you tonight is we have our quarterly luncheon that we're doing tomorrow at First National Bank of East Texas. And other than that, most of our business has been under executive session. We've got a lot of big projects that we're talking about and a lot of big projects that we're working on, and I'm just not at liberty to discuss those in open forum. But I will be glad to address any questions that you might have. Oh, yeah. So that's all I got. Good? Yes, sir. Good. Thank you.
So I don't have anything else from my end. Does the council have anything else we'll cover? Okay. Well, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this evening.
So motion.
Got that from Mark and second from Sherilyn. All in favor? Thank y'all.